Sophie, till late in the third quarter, you guys were struggling offensively in that frame. Second half in general didn't feel the same as the first half on that end. Did something change for you guys? What did you see as kind of leading to stalling on that end?
Yeah, I think we were just kind of slow. And every time that we're slow, especially defensively, it just somehow affects our...
How can a team go from having a double-digit lead to total anarchy in a single night? The Indiana Fever succeeded in doing just that, embarrassingly losing to one of the league's weaker opponents. Coach Stephanie White blamed a halted offense for the situation. Her players, however, obviously had a different perspective. After the game, Sophie Cunningham didn't mince words when she criticized the team for losing its fight, identity, and competitive edge. This wasn't just another unfortunate defeat. It was the direct result of a single startling coaching choice. In addition to costing them the victory, this choice revealed a widening divide between the players fighting on the court and the coaches calling calls from the sidelines.
It's up to the chat! Get it done! Up to the chat. Why at the same time? Because I'm you and you're me. We switch parties.
Boston finds some room and knocks it down with 6 minutes to go. Sims now takes off for Mitchell. How foolish of Odyssey Sims.
Into Boston. Hand off Mitchell. Indiana has to hurry. Lob back for Boston. Boston finishes. It's a 2-point game, 5.9 seconds.
Indiana appeared unstoppable for the majority of the first half. They dominated the game's tempo, jumping out to a commanding 13-point lead. Aaliyah. Boston dominated the court, prompting double teams and finishing strong each time she made contact with the ball. Putting up buckets wasn't all Kelsey Mitchell was doing. She was carefully planning the attack, cutting through Washington's defense and opening doors for everyone in her path. With the assurance of a team on a playoff run, the defense locked in, the ball zipped from player to player, and the Fever carried itself. They appeared to be the undisputed superior squad and had quieted the audience. However, behind that initial domination, fissures were beginning to appear, laying the groundwork for a collapse that would quickly wipe everything out.
5 off the bench. Indiana has 8 first-quarter bench points. That's typically been a strength when they're playing well, as Iriafen just bullies her way inside. Now Citron being guarded by Lexi Hull. Hull goes over the screen, defends her really well. Citron just has to fire it up, and a circus shot.
With a decisive 227 run, Washington came roaring back and did more than simply eliminate Indiana's lead. Their morale was totally crushed by it. What appeared to be a fluid, self-assured offense abruptly became flat and predictable. The defense, which had been so incisive in the beginning, soon became reckless and unfocused. The Mystics had an incredible 26 trips to the free throw line as a result of the constant accumulation of fouls. It felt like every trip down the court ended in the same manner: a late defensive rotation or a careless turnover. Washington wasn't staging a clinic here. This was Indiana holding a self-destruction seminar. And to make matters worse, the harm wasn't being done by Mystics veterans. They were rookies. Aaliyah Afambinley and Sonia Citron performed well beyond their years, combining for almost 40 points and penalizing Indiana for each and every error they committed. It is not simply a difficult defeat to have a young, inexperienced team rip your lead away piece by piece. It is utterly degrading.
Their ball screen coverages right now.
Here's Mitchell on the handoff, bounce pass. Boston one bounce and a left-handed finish. Here's Boston, the offensive rebound, flips inside to Howard, who lays it in.
You go step-up screen, flare on the weak side. They had to make sure they had the right shot clock time as well while they were reviewing that.
So Indiana with a 10-point lead here, 6 minutes until halftime as Boston finds some space and knocks it.
The players on the floor are not to blame for this. They abandoned all they owned outside. Aaliyah Boston shown that she wasn't backing down from anyone by dominating the paint, scoring 20 points and collecting 9 rebounds. Despite constant defensive pressure, Kelsey Mitchell managed to score 14 points and come very close to a double-double with 9 assists. And the club's lifeblood, Sophie Cunningham, contributed 8 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals, while providing the kind of ferocity and grit that doesn't always show up on a stat sheet, but keeps a team going. They should have won because of their perseverance, struggle, and energy, but they didn't. The rationale is more related to the star, who never left the bench, than it is to the players who gave it their all on the court.
I think we over-dribbled at times. Our off-ball movement wasn't there. We did a lot of standing. It's almost like we gave the ball to Kelsey and just tried to watch her work. And that's not when we're at our best. I mean, yes, certainly we want to have the ball in our hands, but we've got to continue to get movement with and without the basketball. It was getting stuck. I mean, we want to play 0.5 to 1 second basketball, and we weren't. And it's got to get...
The offense became agonizingly predictable as it stalled out. Kelsey Mitchell tries to push her way into a packed painting following a series of possessions. But throughout the night, Indiana disregarded a straightforward response. Christy Wallace, the team's most dependable deep shooter, who completed more than 42% of her three-point attempts, was the answer. Wallace was the ideal player to stretch the floor in a game that was severely lacking in spacing. Mitchell would have had clear driving lanes, and Aaliyah Boston could have dominated inside if her shooting threat had been enough to force Washington's defense out of the lane. Wallace, on the other hand, never touched the ground. As the Fever's offense crumbled, she sat rooted to the bench. One possession followed by another. It was the night's most perplexing decision, and the coaching staff is solely to blame.
Chloe Bibby tonight, were there thoughts maybe plugging her in to try and spark the offense a little bit, or what was the decision behind not playing her?
Yeah, there were some thoughts. I think that it matched up defensively more than anything with the way that we were going to try to play them, or in some of our switches and things like that. So that was mostly the reason.
And then just with the rotation, was it just those eight or seven that you ran with? Was it just they were flowing well and you wanted to just leave that going, or what was the thought there?
Yeah, I think some of it was defense. Being able to execute the type of defensive coverages that we wanted to have against this.
Coach Stephanie White attempted to clarify her choice after the game, but her justification only served to further perplex the supporters. She stated that defensive matchups were the reason she kept Chloe Bibby on the bench, and that she was concerned Washington would exploit her on the glass and on defense. However, that justification is flawed. Without BBB, Indiana's defense was already deteriorating. In just the fourth quarter, they forced Washington to the free throw line 14 times and were allowing wide-open chances. In any case, Queen Egbo was in charge of the paint. White claimed that the issues she was attempting to avoid persisted, albeit in a worse form. Ironically, White acknowledged that the offense had come to a full standstill. Even though she was aware of the problem, she would not release the one player who could have provided her squad with a much-needed spark.
It hurts. I mean, I think we had 8 turnovers for 13 points in the second half as well. So we didn't take care of it.
Indiana with their work cut out for them here. 6-point deficit, just over 5 minutes left to play. Mitchell, feed inside. There's an easy 2 for Boston. Cunningham leans in, thought she'd throw the foul. Boston pulls down the rebound and lays it in.
The instructor attempted to explain things, but one player took a completely different tack. The contrast was remarkable when Sophie Cunningham took the microphone. Just plain, unreserved honesty without any justifications or convoluted reasoning. Although she acknowledged that the team suffered injuries, she made it plain that she would not use it as an excuse. The line that went across everything was then discarded by her. We must return to our canine nature. There was more to it than a soundbite. The team's entire mindset was put to the test. Cunningham was making the point that they are no longer feared by their opponents. They are being out-hustled, outworked, and out-muscled. Her remarks revealed a deeper issue and served as a demand for accountability. The difference was immediately apparent. One of the players talked about heart while the coach discussed XS and OS. And that disparity demonstrated how much the divide between the playbook and the locker room has widened.
I think it was something like a 22-7 run, the end of the second, beginning of the third quarter. And those are hard to recover from when anytime really, but when you're missing pieces. And, we've got to make sure that we're sharper at times. We don't have the margin to have lulls within quarters. And then I believe they had something like 21 points from free throw line and turnovers of their 26 in the fourth. And, that's we control that, defending without fouling. You know, we control that, taking care of the basketball, decision making at times, and some of it's, you know, playing some people out of position, and some of it's just not being, valuing the basketball in the way that we need to value it, being a little sloppy.
You must think about who wasn't out there in order to truly understand the frustration. The cornerstone of the Fever was absent. In the same week that Sydney Carlson and Ari McDonald suffered season-ending injuries, Caitlin Clark remained out. The team had to sign Odyssey Sims to a hardship contract in order to cover for him because the roster was so small. Despite all of those failures, these players' perseverance was impressive. Inside, Aaliyah Boston took on even greater accountability. Sophie Cunningham took over the tough, unglamorous labor when Kelsey Mitchell was compelled to double her role as a facilitator. They nevertheless established a 13-point lead in spite of their lack of players. However, that is precisely the reason why the absence of changes is so unacceptable. You cannot afford to be inflexible when your roster is exhausted and overworked. At that point, you must outsmart your opponents rather than follow a formulaic strategy.
Her way inside.
What a pass by Melvin, too. Really nice.
Mitchell turns on the Jets and gets to the rim.
No one can keep Kemper as one of the best rebounders out of her area, which means the ball not directly above her head as Cunningham with a steal.
Cunningham feeds Sims, who goes coast to coast and lays it in. So 4 quick ones for Indy.
The offense of Indiana wasn't simply stalled. It was utterly destroyed. The Fever had no rhythm, no variety, and no plan as Washington erupted. Every possession turned into the same worn-out motion. Toss the ball to Kelsey Mitchell in the hopes that, despite a horde of defenders, she would somehow work magic. Washington didn't have to create a complex plan. Knowing exactly where the ball was going, they just blocked the paint. Mitchell had to make a series of unavoidable disputed shots. The rest of her teammates merely watched, yet this wasn't a system in disarray. This was the complete lack of a system. Spacing is the best defense against a crowded paint job. A shooter who makes the defense respect the perimeter by stretching them. And Chloe BBY, Indiana had that choice. She never left the bench, though. The Fever weren't simply stranded. Their own coach's inability to adapt strangled them.
Oh,